Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. We're going to talk a lot about Arizona basketball, Arizona athletics, obviously, but also some possible traveling partners if Arizona was to move on to the Big 12. But as always, let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. As always, I am your host, Mike Luke, and thanks for making this your first listen of the day. All right, we got a lot to get to on this show, but first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about the Big 12 possible expansion and what all of this means. Now, obviously, Colorado is off to the Big 12, and that shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody, mainly because the writing was on the wall, and on top of that, I do think that it's fair to say that you shouldn't be surprised. Again, the Pac-12 was given an ultimatum by Colorado. We need to see some numbers. And guess what? No numbers were ever shown. That was called Colorado calling your bluff. The fact that you are a year past and you still don't have any numbers leads, I think, a lot of people to believe that there are no numbers. And Colorado is saying we need to find financial stability. And not only do we need to find financial stability, we need to find it now. And that's what they were able to do. Now, again, the Big Ten and the SEC, those are the two big dogs right now. They're the ones that are going to be making $70 million plus per school. They got the biggest institutions, all of that. So it's basically a battle for third place right now. And the Big 12 is squarely positioned themselves to be third place and to be the spot where a lot of schools go. Especially when it comes to basketball, because like we talked about, they have presented themselves as the basketball favorite out there, and probably the best basketball conference in the country. Now, Arizona, I would certainly like Arizona to be the one that follows Colorado out there. Also, I don't care about what everybody keeps saying about how Big 12 has lame cities. I don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me. As a matter of fact, that pretentious mindset, I think, is why so many people are here in the first place. So again, I don't buy any of that. I don't care about any of that. So when it comes to obviously realignment, if your biggest argument is, well, you don't like Stillwater, well, okay, cool. Yeah, it's not really an argument. So Colorado's out the door. Now, Arizona, I think, would fit very, very well. And honestly, not only very, very well, I think across the board very well. And one thing about them is that you got basketball, you got football, you got a big town, and it's everything that the Big 12, I think, would like to add is Arizona right there. Not only would they like to add them, they would like to not only would they like to add a school like that, they'd like to add more schools like that. Because, again, Brett Yormark was able to put it in his deal that if more schools are added, that Arizona, or if more schools are added, they'll be able to get in there at that rate of $31.7 million. Now, they've got to be a Power 5 school. They can't be a Group of 5 school. So we're going to get to that in a second. So obviously we talked about Colorado. We talked about Arizona. Who would be some of the other candidates? Now, I know a school like Oregon State or Washington State would like to get in there, but not so fast, my friend. Ha, ha, ha. Not going to be those schools. So let's talk about the strategic possibilities of some of these other schools. ASU, right now, could be wrong, but I don't see it. You got a president in Michael Crow who doesn't care about sports, which is a big problem for why we're here. Now, remember, Michael Crow was probably Larry Scott's biggest defender, a curious move, to put it mildly, right there. And not only was he his biggest defender, when ASU coaches have talked a lot about have talked about colleges and, when ASU has talked about, when ASU as coaches have complained that they need a little bit more, that's where things kind of come into place right there. Listen, in this day and age, you need to be able to win the arms race. And not only do you need to be able to win the arms race, you got to be acting like you take this seriously. And when Bobby Hurley goes out there and says that this isn't good enough, that I need to be able to see, I need to be able to get more. And when your president comes in and essentially says, no, you're good. That's just a slap in the face right there, because if anybody's been to ASU's facilities, they know they're not good. But that shows you the priorities. That we're kind of at right now. So I don't know that ASU is going to go to the Big 12. As a matter of fact, it was just my guess. Again, no inside info. I think that the Big 12 is going to try, or the ASU is going to try to wait this one out. Try to be kind of sly throughout the entire process, and maybe get a conglomeration of schools, leftover schools from the Pac-12, and maybe some new schools like San Diego State to make this work. I don't see them having the vision or the foresight to be able to make this move. And honestly, I don't even care about that aspect with the rivalry, because we can still focus on pretty much everything else, and you can schedule them one out of the year. I don't see ASU making that move. Then Utah, I definitely don't see making the move, because Utah has been one of the strongest proponents of the Pac-12 staying together. And when you think about it, there's a couple different reasons. First, they don't want to be in the same conference as BYU. I'm not going to even get into that little realm right there, but to me, that is what it is. But they also see the Pac-12, and they know that the Pac-12 is an easy path to the college football playoffs, especially as it's expanding. I don't know that that's going to be the case when half the conference leaves, but you could say that there's a chance that Arizona is, or that Utah is probably going to look to salvage something with the Pac-12. I don't think they have any interest really in going into the Big 12. That's at least what I've been told. And honestly, that's kind of what I believe right there. So I don't see Arizona State and Utah being part of that. Now, I know the Big 12, and things can change, obviously. I know the Big 12 would like them to be part of it, but I don't know that that's going to be the case. And like I said, when you've got ADs that don't care about sports, that's kind of why we're here in the first place. And that is really on Michael Crow right there. So Michael Crow can eat crow when it comes to this one. All right, now got to tell you a little bit about LinkedIn. LinkedIn, my friends. All right, LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Here's the deal. You can post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege, and you can get the workers that you need, or you could maybe find a job right there. Everybody knows somebody that's been hired through LinkedIn. It's not some Sasquatch. It's not some boogeyman that you hear about, but nobody really has any good stories. LinkedIn is here for the people, by the people, with the people. Every verbiage you can imagine, LinkedIn has it. Check it out, LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Hop in there, get going today, and you will thank me later. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we're rocking around the rest of the Big 12, Pac-12, you name it, we got it over here. All right, now the next team that I think is going to be fascinating in all of this, quite frankly, will be, well, you already got the mountain schools, obviously. We talked about that. I would guess that Arizona follows Colorado to the Big 12. I think that ASU and Utah are very hesitant about this move. Very hesitant. Now, let's go to the Pacific Northwest. All right. A couple things that I found out through this realignment is just kind of how schools are valued strategically, all of that. And the one thing that I've definitely found out about this that I didn't understand is the term power institution. And a power institution is generally a school that is in a major city, that is good academically, that has a football fan base. That's the best way that I can put it right there. Seattle or Washington checks off all those boxes. It's a top 50 school in the nation. It's in Seattle, obviously a big city, and it's got a football fan base that cares a lot about football and cares a lot about football. That is a big aspect when you're looking into all of this stuff right here. And not only is it a big aspect, it's essentially what a lot of these schools are looking for. They feel to me, and again, this is just conjecture, but this feels to me like a move that will happen to the Big Ten. And it might not be at the $70 million rate, but I can see Washington taking something a little bit smaller to go in there. And that's kind of where I see all of this playing out, to be quite frank. Now, Oregon's a little bit different. I kind of always lump those two schools in together. Oregon has more of a Big 12 vibe to it for a couple different reasons. First of all, it's not a great academic institution. That's not a slight to my friends in the Big 12, but it's just not. It's kind of got that 150th rating, something like that. It's not big on research at all. But obviously, you've got good football, you got good basketball, and you got Phil Knight. Now, the problem, though, with Oregon is that you worry that what happens when Phil Knight passes, when Phil Knight's done, whatever the case may be. Because Phil Knight's the reason that Oregon is the way it is. It's not an institution per se, like Washington is, that kind of stands on its own ground. It is very much a singular person-driven type spot. And, again, that's kind of where Oregon is. I don't know that Oregon fits in necessarily with the cultural profile that Big Ten's trying to go with. Maybe it does. And again, I'm just surmising right here. But this feels to me like more of a Big 12 type option. Then you look at the Bay Area schools. You look at Cal, you look at Stanford. These are non-starters. They're not going to the Big 12. Cal and Stanford are the reason that I believe the Pac-12 is in this situation to begin with, mainly because it's kind of that academic snobbery. Not only is it that academic snobbery, it's the lack of understanding about how important it is for athletics to be able to be paired with academics. So that's, honestly, like I said, Cal, Stanford, if it wouldn't surprise me at all if Cal shuts down sports, and Stanford, I could see Stanford shutting down sports, but I would imagine that they try to keep it going. I could see Stanford eventually getting an invitation to the Big Ten. Maybe it's an invitation like where they're paired with Washington. I don't know, because they bring a lot of value in that. Obviously, you've got the elite level academics, and not only do you have the elite level academics, you've also got a historically pretty good football program. It's in a big city. It would make some sense for sure. But again, neither one of these are options. Neither one of these are Big 12 options for a variety of the reasons that I just laid out. And like I said, I think with Cal, it wouldn't surprise me if all of Cal eventually shut down athletics. I don't think that it's something that they're particularly serious about. And not only do I not think it's something they're particularly serious about, I think that it's it's just not a priority. And at Stanford, I kind of wonder what their priority is as well, quite frankly, because Stanford is holding on to a coach in Jared Haas, who has been around for now 7 or 8 years, and every single year at Stanford has not been good. In most conferences, if you have a basketball coach that has not been good for 7 or 8 years, there comes a reckoning where that somebody says, well, we really appreciate what you've done, but 7 years is enough and we're not going in the right direction. There has never been that move at Stanford. And so I do wonder if this is a little bit different than previous Stanfords where they actually cared a lot about athletics to go with academics. Again, but it also would, like I said, it also wouldn't totally surprise me if they ended up shutting down athletics. Now, Cal, I think it's almost even money right there because I don't think they really care. So that's kind of where we're at right now with the Pac-12 schools. And then I think Arizona, Colorado probably make that move. Then you got Arizona State, Utah. I think they probably stick around and try to cobble together what they can. And then after that, I find some intrigue in Oregon. And I find I don't think the Washington is probably an option, and the Bay Area schools certainly aren't an option either. But there's also some group of 5 schools. Now, keep in mind, the group of 5 schools, there's a little bit of a nuance involved here that I think everybody needs to understand, and we're going to break that all down here coming up next. But keep it locked on Wildcats. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about, and thanks for making this your first listen today, some of the group of 5. Now, what group of 5 means is they're not Power 5 teams, obviously. They not only are they not Power 5 teams, they're not teams that we'll just explain. So when Brett Yormark decided he was going to expand the Big 12, he basically had a pot for 4 extra teams. And all of those teams could come in at $31.7 million. The problem, though, is if they're not a Power 5 school, then they become kind of a pro rata, which they're not guaranteed the 31.7. So Brett, there's going to be a lot of pushback from these schools, and a Brett Yormark is going to have to really exert his influence, really exert his power to be able to make this work. So let's talk about the obvious candidates here. First is UConn. UConn is obvious. UConn is probably the best basketball conference in the or the best. You could make the case that UConn. You could make the case, honestly, that UConn is the best basketball program in the country over the past 25 years. And there's a variety of reasons why. But the first and foremost is you've won 5 national titles in the last 25 years. That's something that is absolutely, you don't see that. Duke hasn't done that. Carolina hasn't done that. Kansas hasn't done that. Kentucky hasn't done that. No schools have done that. And they've done it with 3 different coaches as well, which is something that you definitely need to keep in mind during all of this. So they're a multi-coach school. It's not like it's an Indiana or a UNLV. They don't really offer much in the way of football. They at least have football, which helps. But they obviously don't offer a ton in that regard. I would think that they would be the best candidate to add. Now, again, traveling logistics are less than ideal, obviously. But UConn is the one that's probably at the front of that list. Then after that, you got a San Diego State. Now, San Diego State's obviously been complicated because they have a massive buyout now. And the massive buyout is going to be a problem for anybody because of how much money it is. And not only how much money it is, not only how much money it is, but you're also still a group of 5, or you're still a group of 5 school. But from a basketball and a football standpoint, San Diego State brings a lot. And not only do they bring a lot, they, again, these are both probably top 25 programs, and I think they would fit in very well in the Big 12. As a matter of fact, I could see both of these programs becoming big-time problems in the future because of some of the things they have, the resources, how they become good. And like I said, they become multi-coach schools at this point. I like San Diego State. If it was Arizona, UConn, San Diego State, and Colorado, I think you could sell that as a massive win. Some other schools, then you've got your Tulanes. Tulane is obviously very good academically. It's got both football and basketball, but those are both kind of also rans athletically. Those aren't ideal. You could probably do a little bit better than that. But I would really focus on San Diego State, and I would focus on UConn. If you weren't able to get those Power 5 schools to commit, those would be my next avenues right there. But I wanted to kind of just break everything down right here, where Arizona stands right now, the other schools that are in play, and not only the other schools that are in play, where they actually fit in all of this. Because, again, you've got to remember, the goal of the Big 12 is to become the best basketball conference in the country, and they're well on their way to doing that. You add Arizona, you add, and again, you add Arizona, you add a couple of the other schools we named, and you pretty much got that one on lock. And a school, some little Power 5 or a group of 5 schools as well would be interesting. But all right. On that note, we're going to sign off, but this is only going to get more interesting as the week goes on. So you're going to want to keep it locked on Wildcats, making it your first listen of the day, because there's a lot to know right now. There's a lot to know between what's going on in the Pac-12, what's going on in the Big 12, what schools, because again, like we talked about, there's nuances here when it comes to cities, academics, you name it. And so again, ton of stuff to get to, and we will be there every step of the way. But as always, I'm your host, Mike Luke. Appreciate you keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. You have a very, very happy Thursday, and who knows what we'll be talking about tomorrow, but it'll probably be revolving around conference realignment. We'll talk with you then.